start and welcome all of you. I'm now recording. So on behalf of the entire board of directors, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce you to this weekend's talk by Dr. Michael Conforti. It's really an honor to be able to present to have my face represent the board of directors, and I'd like to name them because we are all part of an integral team that supports Michael Conforti's work, and they're Muriel McMahon, Eduardo Carvalho, Butch Mercer, Jennifer Fidel, Christy Webb, and Nina Kelly. And of course, all of this is on behalf of the founder and director of the Assisi Institute, this International Center for the Study of Archetypal Patterns. It is indeed a testament to the deep hunger and thirst internationally, globally, that we see that so many of you from so many countries around the world are attending. There's over 700 participants who are coming. And so what I would like to do is, first of all, welcome all of you in my native language, and that is the language of Spanish. Así que con todo corazón y alma, de parte mía y de parte de Dr. Conforti, de todos mis colegas que están por todo el mundo, les doy una bienvenida a esta charla para ver qué es lo que nos dice la psique hoy. And then I'm going to invite Flora if she's on. Flora, ci stai? Non la vedo. Da parte da Flora adesso vi do la benvenuta in italiano. Tutti quanti che parlano l'italiano dappertutto il mondo ci diamo la benvenuta. Mi dispiace Flora che non ti ho trovato. And now in Russian, Anastasia.
Hello.
Un minutito. Hold on, Anastasia. Let me pin you, please. Okay.
Добрый вечер, уважаемые коллеги. От лица доктора Майкла Конфорти и всех других организаторов, представляющих Институт Ассизи, Международный центр изучения архетипических паттернов, мы рады вас приветствовать здесь, на этом сегодняшнем вебинаре. Хорошего вечера.
Хорошо. And then, Fleming Barrand, please. Podensk. Sorry. I have to unmute, hold on. My apologies.
Okay, jeg er på. Jamen, på Assisi-instituttets vegne, så har jeg den ære at byde velkommen til alle i Skandinavien, og selvfølgelig især fra Danmark, som er logget på i øjeblikket. Hjertelig velkommen.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so before I formally introduce Dr. Michael Conforti, let me give you an orientation to this webinar so that we can all have the best experience. We are learning to fly a plane as we are building it, or building the plane as we're flying it with all of the technology. And what we have learned from last time of the presentation, here's some things that will help us all. So just so you know, you'll all be muted. At the end of the lecture, there will be an opportunity for you to participate. There's a place where you can raise your hand, and then I will unmute you in order of the way that you have gotten on. For those of you who have trouble hearing or will have trouble hearing because the internet, of course, is doing its thing, please know that what you might want to do is change browsers. Michael had the recording is not going to have any distortions. If you have distortions on your end, I'm encouraging you to change your browser or come in by the telephone, and not to put on the chat, I can't hear Michael, because truly what we have discovered, it's not on this end. So I just beg your indulgence in that. I will be monitoring the chat bar, and as we're already seeing, we're getting welcomes and peace from people from Israel, from all around the world. Just so you know, Michael will not be able to monitor the chat bar. So you feel free to put it on there, and if you have anything that you would like me to know, you can do a private chat to me, and I'll try to help as best I can. And because Michael and the Assisi Institute really has a deep respect for Psyche's own need to maintain things private, to protect the privacy and the integrity of the space. At the end, when we do invite your participation, we just ask that you not share anything personal. It is both a way to really maintain the container for you and for us. So now it is my pleasure to formally introduce Dr. Conforti, and what you experienced at the beginning was a welcome in multiple languages. Some of us are bilingual, many of us are multilingual, and some of us are bilingual by necessity, and some of us are bilingual by love, because we love another culture, we love our native culture or someone else, and we spend time, energy, resources learning the deep structure of language. And unfortunately, we could not see Flora, but Flora has spent her lifetime learning Latin and the Romance languages, and she has put her energy, like so many of us, and resources into learning the antique structure that holds. Noam Chomsky said that we all have an innate language capacity. Many of us have that capacity for other languages. And when we learn the ancient language, the matrix, the mother of the language, then we can follow the evolution. And language gives us, of course, a way to express our human experience. You can see where I'm going with this. Yes? Yes, of course you can see it. Because what I want to tell you is that Dr. Conforti has spent his lifetime, his energy, his intellect, his love, his heart and soul into learning the deep grammar of psyche. He has learned and studied how to conjugate the verb of psyche through myth, dream, fairy tale. He has learned how to do the declension of nouns through unconscious communication, through the new sciences, through the dynamical systems theory. In essence, today, what you're going to hear is Dr. Conforti's translation of the deep and abiding structure and language of psyche, as she seeks to demonstrate what it is that we need to know on a collective and personal level about this pandemic. And so I introduce to you what I believe to be, again, the truth of Dr. Conforti is that he speaks the deep language and translates the deep language of psyche. So, Michael?
Thank you so much. Very, very beautiful. And all of you that gave your time to, the introduction to different languages, and Sylvia, what you said so artistically and lyrically today, it's very touching. And all of you that have helped, Dara that spent many, many hours, and Butch spent tons of hours putting the technological parts together, which I know nothing about, images, which have been very important to this talk. Thank you all. And look, the introductions are beautiful, the different languages, I love all that. And I think we know, or at least have maybe an intimation why we're here and why this talk. And I began 2 weeks ago giving the first presentation on this about who's at the door. And this is an extension of it, because when I opened up the theme, who's at the door, then you got to wonder, okay, what's at the door? What are some of the things we begin to experience are those elements, those dynamics that really do, knock on the door wanting entry into our life. And you know, it was just so impressive that we had over 1,000 people from 15, 20 different countries last time. We have over 700 people today from many, many countries, and many people are new today, some people coming back. So what I'd like to do is I want to just go over a few fundamental pieces that I addressed last time to set the tone. And what I will tell you, those who are on last time, we're going into a place I think is very different where you may expect I'd be going today with this talk, okay? To open up, I think we all share the horror that's going on in the world today. You know, I'm in contact with Flora now, but Flora, who we're speaking about, is in Milan, Italy, which was the epicenter in Europe when this thing first hit. And they lost over 13,000 people. And they, you know, talk about being pioneers in a terrible way. They were the pioneers to this. There was no roadmap whatsoever what to do. Doctors were lost, people were lost, authorities were lost. And they found their way to stumble through with a lot of casualties, as the rest of the world is now going through. I think New York has lost over, what, 14, 15,000 right now, where my family's from. And like a lot of you, my family members have this. One 80-year-old sister is struggling right now with this disease, with this virus. So number one, I really, on behalf of the Institute, all of us, to really dedicate this talk to all people that are struggling with this thing. And everyone's struggling one way or another. The people that have the physical ailments, the people that have died, the economic disasters that many, many people are facing. It's unprecedented unemployment in the country, in the world right now. And we hear from people all over. So I know it's hitting Russia, Madrid, it's Australia, it's hitting in Qatar, all in the Middle East. We have students there. You can't escape this thing. And really, not being able to escape is really what this theme is. And one other thing I want to say to people that are coming in for the first time is all the precautionary measures that we can take. I leave those conversations to people that are much more qualified than me to have those talks. What to do, how to sanitize, and everything. There's some wonderful people around the world teaching and helping with, you know, with masks and all of that. And again, thank God for those people and all the people on the front lines that are doing this. So I really want to acknowledge that first, and then say what I'm hoping to do in the second part of the presentation. And it's not necessary to have been part of the first one to follow the second one. Is try to identify what on an archetypal level are we being forced to deal with. And we have a lot of images that, again, Dara did a wonderful job helping us put together. We're going to show in a little bit, not just yet, but because I want to have a couple of preliminary comments here. What we're struck by is the need to keep away those things that could hurt us. For good reason, right? You know, you want to keep away the virus, you wear the mask. I was just in the supermarket today getting a few things. We are allowed, we're not in lockdown here in Connecticut, but all of the hand carts, you know, they spray them down, and one at a time you get the cart, and then they have all the lines, like when you go to cash out, I think you have to be 6 to 8 feet behind people, and some people bring tape measures with them, and you know, on one day say it's nuts, but if it saves lives, thank God. Thank God it's saving lives. But the point is, we are being confronted with the reality that says survival at the moment depends on protecting ourselves from what is out there. Now that's a huge message. Protecting ourselves from what's out there, from people. I mean, look, tomorrow's Easter and Passover is coming. How many of us are spending the time alone, or just with our immediate family? You can't invite your kids over. You can't invite your cousin, your father, mother, who's ever still alive, you know, your in-laws, grandkids. You can't do it right now. Well, most of us can't do it because we're in whatever that term is called. It's kind of like a lockdown. Staying in one place, whatever it's called. So I've been wondering, what is this? What is this about keeping things away from us? Now, I've been an analyst for just about 40 years. I began my training in New York in 1979. It was a wonderful training at the New York Young Institute. And again, I count my blessings every day that I had that training. And I've had the good fortune to work with a number of really brilliant analysts. Yoram Kaufman was a mentor of mine for close to 25 years or more. Robert Langs was a mentor for many years. And we saw greats. Ann Ulanoff was one of the most wonderful teachers I've ever had at the Young Institute. And so I've met people that have this courage to to listen to what's knocking on the door. The work of psychoanalysis, if you really think about Freud's whole approach, what Freud said, and I know we want to, put him in the trash can, which is silly. He made a lot of wonderful contributions. He said analysis is making conscious the unconscious. Now remember, for the Freudian approach, the unconscious are all the repressed desires, wishes, memories, whatever. It's all part of the personal that we push away. Now, we do it. I mean, what do we do with trauma? What do we do with the parts of ourselves we don't really value? They're all pushed away, they're repressed, suppressed, whatever. The Jungian approach adds a whole different dimension to it. It's what are the archetypal pieces? What are the forward-moving pieces of our life? What does destiny want of us? What does the self want of us? How do you live that authentic life? And many times, we kind of barricade ourselves in a life. We have our careers, we have our families, we have our identity, but still, chi sta bussando alla porta? Chi sta bussando alla porta? Who's knocking on the door? And you begin to realize that we've learned, and this is my point for this presentation, what we are being taught by this experience with the virus right now about locking doors, washing hands, don't let anybody in, don't let the delivery people in, whatever, keep the food at the front door, keep it exiled. Again, in the outer world for good reason. However, inadvertently, this message is being imported into our personalities and our psyches, only reinforcing the tendency to keep away from us those undesirable contents. And it's interesting, maybe somewhat synchronistically, but for the past 6 or 8 months, we've been doing a Wednesday seminar at noon in our group. So he's part of it, Vioriel and others. And what I've been talking about is really this issue of what do we do with these contents that are trying to come into our life, as difficult as they are? And what are the consequences of pushing them away? And also, so I have one part called the ravages of denial. The second part is they don't go away. Those of you in Australia, it's a boomerang effect. We throw these away and they come back to us. And this is what I'm calling the migration of the forgotten. And that term, just to give you the backdrop to that, it's coming from a book by one of the people I deeply admire, Elie Wiesel. And the book is called The Forgotten, where it's all about the need to remember. When he asked his son, would you be my memory for me? Because he was losing his memory in the story. And the point is, the memories don't go away. Freud says, we repeat what we don't want to remember. The return of the repressed we get. And there are many, many models. So when I began working on this, I said, okay, what are some images? Because I love movies, I love stories, I love plays, opera. What are some images? And the one that came back to me first was the 3 little pigs. Now, come on, that's a silly child story. Well, I'm going to spend some time on that today. It's a brilliant story to understand what's knocking on the door and how we handle it. And also the different stages of readiness that we can be in to accept what's at the door. Sometimes we're not strong enough. Any clinician would know, any parent would know, there are some things you don't want to tell your kids right now. They're not ready for that. There are some truths that could be totally overwhelming. For a child, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, we all learned, look, better to say nothing. I mean, in Italian, there are so many expressions for that. Strategy, meglio di scegliere, meglio tacere. At least 3, 4 different ways of saying, shh, don't say anything about it. Because many times it's too much to bear. However, the piece you get to as a clinician is, okay, but still, what are the consequences? And where do these contents go? When you realize we live in this interactive field where, whether you know it or not, the contents are going to affect you. Like electromagnetism, it's always around you. Gravity is always around us. The fields that are in the natural world are always around us, as are the dynamics within the archetypal fields that surround us. So my work has been, I would say for many years, I've been specializing working with trauma for almost 20, 30 years. You see that the stuff is there all the time. The contents are there. So the image of the door became prominent for me. Now, as we get into more of the other part of the content right now, here's a question I have. Well, where does the commonality of images come from? We have many, many images of the door, okay? So we have the door and the inhabitants. And I'm speaking now when the inhabitants want to protect themselves from the contents of the door, on the other side of it. We're going to get to the three little piggies, but remember that story, it's the bad wolf that's out there, okay? Now, I don't even want to go into the particular symbolism of the wolf. For now, one of our colleagues, Katrina Messenger, did a wonderful talk on Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf, a really unique and quite a brilliant interpretation of the wolf in that story. But right now, the wolf is going to be symbolic of the contents that we try to keep away. Other images. We have, remember The Shining? I showed images of that last time with Jack Nicholson, that horrific scene when he's smiling and he says, here's Johnny, and he breaks through the door and terrorizing his wife. Images of the devil knocking on doors, the Grim Reaper. For some people, it's not always dark. For some people, it's joy. Some people that can't let joy in their lives for different reasons, because of what they've been through in their past, because of their trauma. Joy for them would be the terrifying content, because it's like a snowman that's going to start melting, like in a great film, Frozen. I think it was a wonderful little film. Some of us, and kind of a heads up where we're going with the story, actually, really, of what happens to somebody when they have to experience that kind of joy in their life. And you say, why would it be terrifying? Because the terrifying contents at the door are going to destabilize the personality structure we've established. I'll say it again, because this is very important. The terrifying content at the door will inevitably destabilize the psychic equilibrium we've established. Even when it's love, even when it's tenderness, that love for the child or the grandchild that you just, oh my God, you melt when you see them, you know? You melt when you feel that somebody loves you that much. Oh my God, you can say, I've never felt this, or I've hungered for this so long. Or the hatred. So both are there, both. There are other images of this. The movie just came out, Mr. Rogers, right? Remember Mr. Rogers? I wonder who's that knocking on the door. And the funny version of that with, what's his name, the comedian, Eddie Murphy, when he does the little skit about Mr. Rogers. And he says, who's at the door? And it's a landlord wanting money for the rent. But there are so many images. So number one, commonality of images. Commonality of images is what reveals the archetypal nature of the image itself. Okay, I'll say it again. It's the commonality of images that reveals its archetypal nature. Now, there are a couple of wonderful pieces here that add, as they begin to build on the sense that this really is an archetype, the archetype of the stranger at the door, which is often terrifying, and the inhabitants try to keep it out. Number one, when we find Neumann, he gives one image. He says, look at the womb, right? He says, and I'll read, this is from Origins, History of Consciousness, page 1314. Okay. The question about the origin, however, must always be answered by womb, for it is the immemorial experience of humanity that every newborn creature comes from the womb. Hence, the round of mythology is also called the womb and the uterus. Through this place of origin, though this place of origin should not be taken concretely. In fact, all mythology says over and over again that this womb is an image. The woman's womb being only a partial aspect of the primordial symbol of the place of origin from whence we come. This primordial symbol means many things. It is not just one content or part of the body, but a plurality, a world of cosmic region where many contents hide and have their essential abode. So what he's giving us here is an image that, clearly it's part of a woman's makeup, but it's part of humanity's makeup. It's archetypal. So many times when we speak of the womb of civilization, the womb where things grow, where things begin to take shape, it's all part of this archetypal sense of the container. Shakespeare says, he says, and this our life, exempt from public haunts, finds tongues in trees and books and in the running brooks. He's talking about our psyche tells its story. And I'll read it again. It's just a lovely little piece. And this our life, exempt from public haunts, finds tongues in trees and books and in running brooks. Again, the commonality. This now comes from Eric Jansen, a very powerful book called The Self-Organizing Universe. He's talking again about commonality of experiences. And he said, science is about to recognize these principles as general laws of the dynamics of nature. Applied to humans and the systems of life, they appear therefore as principles of a profoundly natural way of life. Okay. So now we're going to begin looking at what are some of these contents that knock on the door. Okay. Now, number one, they're often terrifying. I said a little bit about that a moment ago. They also are terrifying in proportion to the degree to which they are exiled. And I want to thank Sylvia for all of the wonderful work on the theme of exile, giving a series of lectures and presentations on the exiled individual and the exiled contents of the unconscious. So again, a large part of what makes up the terrifying nature of these, the wolf at the door or Jack Nicholson or whatever, is they are proportionate to the degree to which we have exiled or repressed or suppressed the contents that are trying to get in. That's number one. On a personal level, what is it? Now, again, this is, any clinician would tell you, and most of us that are honest with ourselves, we say, okay, what's really trying to come into our life, either through our dreams, through our fantasies, through our experiences, especially through our repetitions? Many times it's guilt. I'll tell you right now that unconscious guilt will take us down quicker than almost anything. But what's unconscious guilt? It's guilt for things that we've done but we don't want to acknowledge. And I talked about this the last time more in detail. I mean, how does a parent ever live with and ever look at themselves in the mirror, realizing that they've done these horrendous things to the child, the son or daughter? How does a teacher or a mentor or a clergyman ever look at themselves in a mirror knowing what they've done to their parishioners or people that trust them? How does a husband or a wife, especially say abusive husband, how do they ever look in the mirror knowing that they beat the hell out of their partner? How do you do it? And the point that I've been taken by for many years is that you say, okay, how do you do it? The unconscious will not let you go. That's the point. It continues to knock on the door. And why? To punish you? It's not about punishment. The contents and the experience and the unconscious perception of what we've done with our lives, especially around this particular piece of guilt, comes back to us because the exiled contents begin to live a life of an independent entity. The more they're split off from consciousness, the more they're going to hover around and they're going to land now and then, and they're going to make us pay a price. But we don't even know what the heck we're paying the price for. So unconscious guilt comes in many ways. People that are alcoholics, it's not what they do consciously. This is all unconscious possessions. Many of these things happen in somewhat dissociative states. What we do to our kids and the horror alcoholism. But when you terrorize your family, when we terrorize our family because of addictive behaviors, because of abuse, or because of our own traumas, somewhere, you got to look in the mirror. And again, psyche's knocking at the door is really an attempt to get us to that mirror. The next piece is, do we have any other sort of outcrop, any other experiences of this content that wants to get in and how we protect ourselves? Is it an archetype? Let's look at other examples of the archetype. And I have 6 of them right here. I'll just go through them somewhat quickly. Okay, so my issue here is, again, how is this archetype of the intruder trying to get in or breaking in on inhabitants? How is that manifested in life and other experiences of not just the outer world, fairy tales, whatever? One is biology, okay? Look at the autoimmunological system. And I'll read a piece here. Okay. Now, once the greatest concern is survival in the body. I think we all know that. And Robert Lang's made some wonderful, wonderful discussions about the the unconscious function in a way that is really quite similar to the autoimmunological system by identifying psychic toxins, by identifying those things that are disturbing to us, and how when the unconscious presents either through dreams, fantasies, through images, it's very similar to how we have antibody responses to the antigens in the system. So the body is always maintaining surveillance. And the minute you have that bad meal, right, with the shrimp that you don't feel too good about, or something happened, way too much salt in the body, and your body begins to react. Or so many desserts. Those desserts are incredible, right? And you begin having your sugar drops. And the body works right away to try to restore equilibrium. So on a biological level, it's there. Because all those things that represent a threat to survival are going to be either trying to be kept at bay, or they're going to be eliminated as quickly as possible. The next piece is the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain, which is the earliest brain, is again oriented for survival. Anything that's going to be a threat, we're either going to fight or flight. And I'll tell you one thing that we've been talking about in some of our seminars is the flight reaction is more pervasive than I think any of us ever realized through dissociative reactions. Okay? And so they're not therapists. Dissociation means some part of you just goes away. And you don't even realize it many times. You don't even realize that you're distant, that the person's not even emotionally present anymore. Number two is cellular structures. We're going to have some images on the slides in a few minutes. In the cellular structure itself, you have the precious nucleus, which contains all the information for survival, all of the nutrients, and the outer membrane. And you know that disease often happens when there's some rent in the outer membrane, when the content from the door begins to get into the nucleus. Okay, so again, we have another example. We have one of the most powerful of all times, the mother's womb. I mean, the mother's womb that provides that life for the fetus, providing all the things it needs and keeping out all the things it doesn't need, doing its best to keep the temperature, the saline solution, and the love. Forget, I mean, the love and the tenderness that ideally goes into this. So again, it's what's inside. Two other models. And then I want to show slides in about 2-3 minutes here. Anna Freud, Sigmund Freud's daughter, did a whole piece on the defense mechanisms. Now it's interesting because in many ways you could say the cellular structures, the immunological systems, all represent an ectoskeletal defensive mechanism. They're outside of us, okay? As we evolved, we began seeing an internalization of these responses to threats. So it's not just the fight or flight. It's not only the immunological system is going to work. Part of evolution allowed us to develop our own inner mechanisms to defend against threats. Okay? We have many, from manic defenses to reaction formation. And as Anna Freud writes quite eloquently about it, she says, you know, whenever there's some sense that there's something that wants to hurt us, either real or imagined, that's where it gets kind of complicated, real or imagined threats, these defenses come up. Okay, so again, the defenses come up to keep out the contents. Architecture. Architecture is another wonderful example. You may want to read the work of Peter Stevens, who did some wonderful, wonderful work on patterns in nature and patterns in architecture. Christopher Alexander did wonderful works on a pattern language. And you begin to see that from the earliest architectural designs, it was a circle. Whether it was a cave you found. I mean, you see, going from the mama's womb to a cave, to a tent, to the, what do you call it, where they live with the, what do you call it, like the people that would travel all the time, the nomads, right? They would have their big tents with the beautiful oriental rugs inside, to the indigenous people with the igloos. There was always a structure. And the structure, the great round, had one purpose. You see, so what is the question, well, what came first? In many ways, you say it's the archetype that's primordial. All these designs, and that's why that quote by Yan. So let me give it to you one more time because you really see it more even in its context right now. When Yan says, okay, is it biology, is it psychology, whatever? And he says here, science is about to recognize these principles, all these dynamics, right, as general laws of the dynamics of nature. Applied to humans and the systems of life, they appear therefore as principles of a profoundly natural way of life. So what he's saying is all these dynamics, like Neumann with the womb, it all represents an archetypal foundation which is now expressed in these different ways. I mean, you tell me who's got a home without a roof? I mean, you have hurricanes, you hit the hurricane, and the first thing you do is you get a roof on somehow. Even you got to do a tar paper roof, you got to do plastic, something to enclose, something to keep out. I'm looking right now, I get these beautiful windows in my office, right? 3 big windows looking out. The windows allow the outside to come in to some extent, but it still creates the boundaries. Remember the other day, a bird flew by the window and I jumped, you know, right? The natural response, I jumped, I thought it was coming in at me, but the windows protect you. So this image is clearly archetypal. And the last one is therapy. I mean, something I'm sure almost all of us on this call have been involved in one way or another. Therapy has been called from the beginning of time a temenos, a space within which healing takes place. Hopefully healing takes place. When you can close the doors, you shut the phone off, you're not eating lunch, no one's coming to the door to bother you, and you're there and you close it off much like a womb. And you allow the person to tell their story, and it's not just the story, that in that space, it's allowing for the emergence of these archetypal dynamics. I mean, is it really so different from these magnificent churches we find, from the magnificent church like the Basilica di San Francesco or the Bazooka, or the little one he built? They're all there for the purpose of inviting in the numinous and the transcendent. This is what this work is about. So anyway, I hope I've begun to set the stage here to talk about how the image of the door and protecting ourselves is not just the virus. That's the whole point of this. And somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, well, I don't see how the talk really tied into the virus thing. To me, it's essential. And it's not this part of my presentation is not just about the virus in there, but it's the virus inside of the psyche, the contents that are disturbing us, and how we unconsciously evade them because it's threatening. Now, Dara and Butch, if we could show some of these images, it'd be really good right now. And I'll do a little description of these as we see them. Is there any way to get on the big screen? Because you really can't see them.
Michael, it is on the big screen.
Oh, for you guys it is. Okay, I'm sorry, because I can't see it. Okay, these people you see on the screen right now, from Robert Langs to Freud, to Anna Freud, to Elie Wiesel, to Erich Neumann, and apparently we had the wrong image last week of Erich Neumann, von Franz, Anne Uhlenhoff, and Jung. These are all pioneers in dealing with the contents that are on the other side of the door. I mean, I've mentioned Elie Wiesel many, many times throughout the past 20 years of my work. I have never read the work of anyone or met anybody, and I had the good fortune of actually having a meeting with him one day, that has, or I guess I could say had, right, because he passed away, that had the courage to look into the face of this darkness that none of us want to do. I mean, yes, none of us have lived through what he lived through. I mean, there's nothing that you can say could ever compare with genocide or Holocaust. However, many of us do have our own terrible, terrible traumas we lived through. But he was a living model for what it's like to find a way to live with the contents. And what he said, as did all of these pioneers up here, it's not only the trauma, it's what you do with it. And let me just read a little piece. This is in terms of what we do with the trauma, right? Some of you may know the work of Górecki. Górecki is a Polish composer who wrote the Symphony of Sorrowful Songs, also called the Third Symphony. If you go on YouTube, there's an interview with him that, oh my God, it's heart-wrenching. And it ties into the work of these pioneers we have up on the screen here. Let me read this briefly. And he's being interviewed. He's probably, I think he's only a few years away from death at this point. And he says, the only way to confront this horror, he's speaking of the Holocaust, is to forget. The only way to confront this horror is to forget, but you could never forget. The world today, he writes, is the same. Also a nightmare crushing us. And I read that and thinking, my God, here we are again with this crushing virus coming over the world today. Then he goes on, somewhere I had to take a stand, as a witness, as a warning. Scratched on the walls of the prison and the camps, they found this one particular message. Nothing tragic, nothing melodramatic. It simply said, Mama, don't cry. Mama, don't cry. And he said, I read this and I wanted to express a great scream. I have no words to say what I mean. The sorrow, it burns inside me and I can't shake it off. And he goes on to say, he knew he had to do something with the sorrow, with this horror. And then he began working on this piece of music, which is one of the most powerful pieces of music, in my opinion, one of the most powerful pieces of music ever written, hauntingly beautiful. Hauntingly tragic in its opening acts, opening maybe the first 15 minutes of it. Again, it's called Symphony of Sorrowful Songs, or the Third Symphony. And I love this interview because it speaks about when one can look at what's at the door. I mean, the horror for him, the horror for anybody that had to look at this. You know what we do? We obliterate it. I mean, it's hard to believe there's still some people in the world say it never happened. And how many people, I mean, there are not many people alive. It's a second generation now. How many people have suffered in silence because they could not find a word or could not find a creative expression for what they lived through? Gorecki did. Elie Wiesel found a way for all those crushing realities that came bursting through the door. Nobody opened the door with these traumas. They came bursting through the door. And you just look at his face. I mean, the lines in his face are deeply creviced lines. It tells the history of what he's been through. And he went on to write, what, 70, 80 books? I have almost all of them in my house. He wrote plays. He wrote operas, arias. And there's something about the need for the creative, the need for creative expression to somehow find a place for the trauma in our lives, to convert it. Okay, so that's why we have the pioneers here. Okay. Okay, the next image. Next, please. Okay, now we have the theme of this, and I think Sarah came up with this, this image. And this is the image that really captures what this whole presentation is about. The wolf at the door. And again, I know we could say a lot about the wolf, what the wolf symbolizes, but you know, that's not the purpose of this presentation. Again, I refer you to Katrina Hopkins, that has done a wonderful presentation on this. And if you write to the office, we could send you a message over to her. And she's very generous with this material. So again, this symbolizes, you see the image right here? The wolf, the door, and the inhabitants. It's a triptych. The door represents the threshold. La Solia. La Solia, the threshold existing between the ego that's inside, the contents on the outside. This image is a perfect representation of the defense mechanisms that we have in the psyche. Now, remember, defense mechanisms are there to protect what's inside. It's not neurotic, it's not sick, it's not damaged. This is part of life, like I said, with the cellular structure. But this is our theme of what happens when the content is there and we continue barricading the door because we're so terrified. Okay, next. Next, please. Okay. Now, this image, I've got to thank Tom Lane for. He just sent this today, and it was so powerful. We had to include it. Sylvia, I can't see the wording. Could you read that?
Yes. Please. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, then I will enter his house and dine with him, and he with me. From Revelation 3:20.
Beautiful. And again, thank you, Dr. Tom Lane, for this image today. I mean, this shows the transformative and the redemptive nature of working with what's outside the door. Now, look, I think we all got to be real. There are things that are, you know, incredibly terrifying. The violence we've lived through in our lives, the violence we've seen, those contents in us that we're so terrified they're going to erupt. Those of you that are veterans or live with veterans, you know what this is like. You never know when that thing is going to be touched again. And when you drop a plate, all of a sudden that veteran's going to hear the bombs going off if they've seen active duty. And they're praying it's not going to come out. And about 10 years ago, there were some drugs that they were developing that tried to eliminate the memory. And you remember a movie came out with, what's his name? Jim Carrey years ago. Something about the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, where they created a machine to do away with all memory, to really, so we don't have to deal with the memories and these experiences. This image, Tom, again, thanks so much. It's saying, look, there's something so transformative, numinous that can occur if we can find a way to open the door. And we can find somebody that can help us, that understands that maybe we're not strong enough right now. Maybe for the next 6 months, we're not strong enough. In a year, we might be. Okay? Okay, Sarah, next, please. Okay, Dara, next, please. Okay, so you drop. Where'd you go? Dara, are you there? Okay, here we go. Okay, next one. Next, please. Okay, next one. No, I can't. Is that Punch's Pilot?
This is
no, oh my God, this is Renoir. This image, I just remembered this the other day, and Dara found it. We're in a time where resilience is desperately needed. And you know, how do we make something like that story with Gorecki, right? Elie Wiesel. How do you make something of the adversity in your life? Well, there's a story about Renoir when someone was coming to meet the great artist. And he was knocking on doors and he couldn't find him. And he finally found his one little door. And he said, I'm looking for the artist Renoir, the great Renoir. He said, well, I don't know about the great Renoir, but I'm Renoir. And this man at the door, the young student, saw this old crippled man with paintbrushes tied to his hand because his hands were crippled with a crippling rheumatoid arthritis. He couldn't move his hands or his fingers. And there he was painting with the paintbrushes literally tied to his hand like this. And you can see they're like crippled hands. And you know what? I think of the image of what we could do with adversity. I mean, I was listening to Cuomo today in New York, and he was talking about, you know, have we learned anything from this? Can we move forward in having learned something from this? That wasn't manic. It was brilliant what he said. Not just we're going to beat it and we're going to get over it and all that, but have we learned anything? When we go back to business, can we do business in different ways? So maybe we're not so vulnerable to this. But I just find it such a powerful image for all of us right now that I think, look, you know, we're at Passover and Easter time, right? Good Friday is yesterday. It is a time of hope. It's spring. It's a renewal. It's the sun returning, S-U-N. This man, his fire was never extinguished. And let's hope to God. Let's pray, get on our knees and pray for that in our own life. Okay, next, please. Now, this is an image Dara found. It's really the image of physicians. I mean, it looks very much like the design of the coronavirus, but it's really physicians all looking in up at the light. It's just an incredible image. Okay, next, please. Okay, now we talked about the protective walls. Now here's an image of the citadel. And I mentioned architecture. From the earliest times, people knew that if you had something precious inside, you needed something strong enough on the outside to protect it. And you see, again, you ask, oh, is this architecture? Is this biology? What comes first? Doesn't matter what comes first. There is a blueprint in the human psyche, the blueprint somewhere that orients life on every level. So it's a wonderful model. Okay, next, please. Now, okay. Now this is one of the, it's not even appropriate to say the miracle of life, but this is the miracle of life. This is semen going to the egg. And there is a split second, not even a second, whatever the time, millisecond, that the membrane opens up and allows the semen to enter. So you see how perfectly synchronized this is in the biology, in the natural world, and also in the psyche, that there are moments when a therapist or a parent knows, now I could talk to my son or daughter about this. And the moment's okay, we could do it. This is the moment that this pregnancy can take in my child's life. Or you say to your spouse something you couldn't say before. Or hopefully without patience. And I've worked on some cases. It took me upwards to 3 or 4 years to bring some of these issues in until this little opening came. And the defense system, I guess they began trusting it enough in the treatment and in me that they allowed this opening to occur. So, Dara, thank you for the image. It's just wonderful. Okay, next, please. Now, here's one of the most powerful images. As I said before, it's the mama's belly. And please, it's not trying to reduce a woman to pregnancy. That's not it. But it's an image, as I read the Neumann quote before, of the protective shield. And Winnicott writes about this when he says it's the tissue aliveness that exists within the uterus. That is what we hope for in psychotherapy. The container, the frame of therapy. The patient knows they're secure. That even when they feel like they're jumping out, they want to put the needle back in their arm, they want the drink, they want whatever the addictive thing is, hopefully therapy can hold. And as a therapy offers that container, like the womb, their ego can begin to borrow that so they can contain it. So the contents can begin to enter in a way that becomes manageable. Okay, next, please. Okay, this is, many of you know, we have a presentation coming up in I think a couple of months now on Jung's, the symbolism of Jung's tower. Jung knew the power of the building, of the womb. And he created this structure of, originally it was just one tower. And he kept on building and expanding. And this was his place this was his sanctuary place. He knew within this structure, self was present for him. I mean, in my home, I have a 100-year-old wood cook stove in the other room, and it's going every day. When that's going, it's similar to Jung's. He had the fireplace there, the wood stove. There's something healing about it. And everyone's got to find a place somewhere. And if you ever get a chance, you go to Zurich, try to find your way to get to the tower. It's just a magnificent place. And, you know, we build our own. We have to have our own place somewhere that has this, whether it's a place in the woods, our own little house, whatever. Okay, next, please. Okay. Now, this is one of the other images, which is hand washing. I mean, we all know now about washing hands. A friend of mine works for Staples, and he said, man, you know, we are selling thousands and millions of bottles of hand sanitizer. Well, yeah, it's what we need to do. However, it's also archetypal, and I hope that piece is coming through in the talk. Those of you that are not familiar with the world of archetypes, it's saying the image is primordial, the experience is primordial. There's been hand washing from the beginning of time. And it is about dirt in some ways. We're dirty. You're outside, and you know, Sylvia, you're working in the garden, you're getting your hands dirty, you and Fleming, you got whatever. You're working on a car. Cutting firewood, you get some of the oil or grease on your hands, you want to wash it off. And now we want to wash off so we don't get the virus. Now look at what happens in the image. Okay, next please. Okay. Next please. Okay. In this one, it looks like there's something else on the hands. It's not clear, but there's some substance on the hand that's washing off. Next please. Okay, so we see the power of it. And the next one is where we really get it. Okay, next, please. This is Lady Macbeth. And some of you that were here last time, we showed this image. Lady Macbeth, remember the line after they killed King Duncan, and they said, I never knew what blood, I never knew a man could have such blood. And she's washing hands and washed the blood off her hand, washed the stain off her hands. Next image for the stain, please. Now, this is Pontius Pilate. You want to read that, Sylvia, please? Because again, I can't see it from here. I just know the images here, but I can't read it.
When Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, he took water and washed his hands, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves. From Matthew chapter 27, line 24.
Wow, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't live with what he had done. And eventually, you know the story, I did some research on it and I found he committed suicide. He couldn't live with what he's done. So the point of the washing of the hands is, how do we try to get away from the stain? Yes, of course it's needed today with the virus. But this is what we do with our defenses. And the thing is, you can't wash it. It doesn't go away. And this is where the profundity of the image, again, Tom Lane's image of Jesus walking to the door, the redemptive nature of the assimilation, the redemptive nature of the gentle invitation to allow these contents into our life. Okay, next image, please. Sylvia, what's it say? I can't see it.
Human cells make up less than half of the body's total cell count. The rest are microscopic colonists. This includes bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea, organisms originally misclassified as bacteria.
Thank you. Now, what this is getting to, similar to the image of Jesus at the door, it's the redemptive nature of what we fear. You know, Dara, you know, told me about this image, and she said, Mike, do you realize that, you know, in early days, we wanted to get rid of all bacteria. Now, what are probiotics about? You know, we know that there are necessary bacteria. All the ingredients in that really good yogurt we eat, right? To put some of the stuff back into our stomach, because antibiotics, whatever, they destroy all the bacteria. So again, you see on a biological level, we have this model of we keep away all that stuff, but now we realize, wait a minute, that we've been exiling is absolutely necessary for survival and health. Okay, next. Okay. What I'm going to do, because of time, Dara, I want to go to the movie clips right now. I want to get to the pieces on the film, because I'm going to show that it's, look, it's not only the horror of our life, the terrible things, the violence and the rapes and the murder. We know that exists, and that we know are some of the things at the door we don't want to acknowledge, either as whether we're the victim or the perpetrator. I think we understand that. Psychoanalysis has really taught us, psychoanalysis, Jungian psychology, and all therapies have really taught us about the ravages of these sort of traumas. But there's a piece that it doesn't teach us about as much, which is where I want to go with this. So, Sarah, Dara, can you get to the piece about, we begin with the movies? I can't. Oh, okay. This is a line, this is paraphrasing from Elie Wiesel, and this is the frame to open this whole segment up right now. We have about half an hour. He says, with the discovery and the development of the rational mind came the capacity to rationalize anything and everything. With the development of the rational mind came the capacity to rationalize anything and everything. Now, clearly, you know what he's talking. He's talking about the Holocaust, how, you know, the Nazis tried to rationalize because they wanted a master race, they wanted to eliminate inferiorities. It goes on. I mean, we still have genocide in many parts of the world. Also in our life, well, we drink, we hit that person, we did this because of, well, we have all these excuses, and you know what? In the soul, it doesn't matter. There's still the consequences. And this is not the Old Testament Yahweh kind of hitting you down. It's not the point. It's the need to reconcile with the exiled. And again, Sylvia, thank you. Thank you for all your brilliant work on that theme. And what we're going to see now is how there are three different films we're going to be looking at for to show this rationalization of what we don't want to accept and how we find a way. Well, we did it for what's right. We did it for the right reasons. Okay, Sarah? Okay. Okay. This is from the movie Casablanca. Now, if you remember the story, and actually my daughter-in-law is from Casablanca. Rick is an American living in Casablanca with the nightclub, right? I think it's just called Casablanca, the club. And we find out that he's been in love with Ingrid Bergman. And she comes back to visit. And she comes back, she's married at this time to a man who's a an activist in the war effort, doing wonderful, wonderful things, and they're working together, the wife and the husband. His name is Laszlo, I believe. Well, she comes back, and it's clear. She says, "I love you, Rick." Now, pause. With these three movies I'm going to talk about now, it's going to be Casablanca, Cyrano de Bergerac, and then La Boheme, the opera La Boheme. While we're seeing the human relation between the two people, you're also seeing the relation between the individual and their soul. That's what makes this so heart-wrenching and poignant. So I'll say it again. I hope I'm saying it clearly. When we look at Rick and Ingmar Bergman, who, by the way, was the mother of Isabel Rossellini, the love these two people have for each other is not only the love between two people, but as they look at each other with their gaze of just unimaginable affection and love, it's also the love for the soul. And you want to see it, can they embrace it? So as they either embrace that love and say, my God, yes, I do love you with all my heart and I want you, or to push away. This is where we're going. Because in these three movies, they push away. For reasons they believe are good reasons. And I don't know if it's this scene, yeah, the back, you can see the plane there. So she says, Rick, I want you. I want to be with you. He said, but you're married. She said, no. But look, my husband will be okay without me. It's you. And what he says, that's why that quote's so important. What he says is, you need to be with him. And he creates this whole thing in his mind that, you know what? She's better off. The world is better off with her. In these three movies, Casablanca, Cyrano de Bergerac, and La Boheme, the man did something he believed was right for the woman. And somebody asked me, well, aren't these characters doing something really admirable by letting the woman go to do this bigger thing? Excuse me. There's a woman, I think she's on the call, Gillian Comstock. And actually, her aunt was the founder of Eranos, okay? I'll never forget, Gillian, if you're on this call. Somebody presented this image years ago, and they said, well, it's a heroic male. They said, he's not heroic. They never asked a woman. They never gave her a choice. And what do they say in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight when he goes to the three wise women? What does the woman want? She wants sovereignty. She wants her own life. She wants a chance to make her own decision. It's preemptive. This too is archetypal. To believe that we're doing it for some greater cause. Ask the person. Okay, next image, please. Okay, this is from Cyrano de Bergerac. Okay, next one, we're gonna have a piece of a film clip here. Just watch with this. Okay, this is the next one. This is all about Cyrano. Okay, you get the film clip there. It's a few minutes. And it's luckily there's subtitles. It's in French. It's hard to hear it, but the subtitles are there. Wow, thank you. Because of time, I'm going to walk you through this next part, and we're not going to show the clips here, but maybe some other time we can do this. The story of La Boheme, it's similar in that, like in Cyrano de Bergerac, he didn't know that she loved him. She didn't care that he had this deformed nose. And when you listen, when you read that incredible dialogue between these two, if you can develop a dual vision, or Sylvia began with the wonderful image of being multilingual. It's not just a language that goes on between two people, whether lovers or intended other or whatever. It's also the language that one speaks when the soul is calling. I'll give you what this is really about today, the bottom part of this talk. And we're going to see an image of redemption in a minute here. I'll talk about it. What are the greatest things that knock on the door as we get older? Those of you that are 20 and 30 years old, 40, whatever, okay, we have other issues. Those of us that are up in years, 60 and 70 and 80, some of you know my father is 104, old Sicilian stock. The older you get, the more you have to reckon with what our life has been about. And Jung says it's about meaning. It's got to be about meaning. And for Jung, the meaning was, do we have a connection with the soul? When Hillman speaks about success and failure in analysis in a wonderful article, he said it's not, are you more successful in the world and all that stuff? That's, of course, part of it. He said, but do you have an enriched and engaged relationship with your soul and with your own destiny? These stories are about where the men found different justifications to run away from their fear. Cyrano de Bergerac loved this woman with all his heart. His words were the words to the woman he loved. The words were to the soul he wanted to connect to, but he was too afraid to. As it was with Rick in Casablanca. He was afraid. If you look at Rick's life, it's sort of a sordid life he had. He's with all men pretty much, all about these terrible things going on in Morocco at the time. Running from the cops, running from this, running from that. There was no passion. There was no soul in that. She came into his life to offer soul. The next piece, see this image right here? We have the video. We can't show because of time. It is, oh my God, the passion between these two people. It's heart-wrenching. And let me set the scene. He knows this is Rodolfo and Mimi. Mimi is dying. Rodolfo finds out that she's dying. And when he knew she was sick, he said, basically, I won't be with you. You should be with another man. A man that has more money can get you medicine and all. But like all these stories, he never asked her. He never asked her, what do you want, honey? I'm poor as a church mouse. I love you with all my heart. Can we do this? Do you want to be with me? Can you get that feel here? It's the soul. He's beckoning to the soul. It's a courtship, not between two people, but between the soul and the individual. The older we are, when we begin hitting this next phase of life, if we don't have a connection with that, you want some of the greatest depression, sadness, probably sadness is a better word. The greatest sadness is what you're seeing right here. If you can envision in this scene somebody who loves with all his heart, but because he was too fickle and too afraid, he couldn't get close to it. Now he's realizing he's got moments left with her before she's dead. Redemption. Okay, Sarah, let's just show that final scene from Moonstruck. It's very short, but this is where redemption happened. Now, let me set the stage. Now, in the movie, Cher's supposed to marry Nicolas Cage's brother, but she falls in love with Nicolas Cage. They fall in love with each other, and they go to the opera and they watch the scene when Mimi is saying goodbye. Now, just watch what happens as they're watching the scene. Can we get that up there, Butch, on the screen? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. They're in Carnegie Hall.
Butch, you have to unmute, I think, for it to be heard.
Okay, that's okay. I'll walk you through the scene. I'll walk you through. So what happens is they're watching the scene because this is supposed to be the one and only, the one date, right? Because she's going to marry his brother.
Oh, he's doing it right now. Hold on.
Okay, okay.
Mm,
No good?
no.
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I could do it. I could do the scene. Because I know the scene, and I think I really can get a feel for what the scene is about. So anyway, what's happening in the scene is they really care about each other, but she's going to marry this other guy, the brother. Okay? So we could freeze right there. Just, anyway, we can't do it. Okay, here's the point. They're watching this. They're watching Mimi say goodbye to Rodolfo. And they know at this moment, this could be their future. Now, here's one of the most powerful images of redemption I've ever seen and healing. They're watching that scene of her saying goodbye to the man she loves and him knowing he didn't do what he needed to in his life. He couldn't get to her. He couldn't get to the woman, couldn't get to the anima. She couldn't get to him for different reasons. They're looking at that scene and they realize, oh my God, this could be our future. No, they say. And they each look at each other with tears in their eyes. And they realize what's happening. They look at each other with tears and they take each other's hand and they form a union that is going to be unbroken. Because they both had the courage to reach out and admit what they wanted. And she could have said, no, I don't want you. Or he could have said, well, it's wonderful, but you know, I've got somebody else, whatever. But they knew what they had. And what I love about this scene, I adore this scene because it breaks the spell. Franz speaks about archetypal possession as a spell. There it is, right there. There's the scene. That's it right there. That's the moment of transformation right there when it's consummated. And it consummated this way, okay? Oh my God. Look at that. Look at that. Well, go watch the movie yourself, guys, when you get a chance. But what we have here is where the first two movies with Casablanca, Cyrano de Bergerac, the man didn't do it. He couldn't do it, and the woman couldn't break through. Here's a story where the soul did have its day. And let me read one last piece in closing, which I think captures some of this, the sense of what happens when we can't get there. And it's a poem by Maya Angelou called Caged Bird. Okay, yeah. We can stop the video then, Butch. Thank you, thank you. Okay, in this poem, Caged Bird, a free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream to the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still. And his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sea, through the sighing trees. And the fat worm's waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fear-filled trill of things unknown but longed for still. And his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. That's what we have here at the end of this movie. And that's what my presentation is really about today. This is not about the addictions and the other horrors. I mean, I'm more than willing to speak about that. I've been working now for 15, 20 years. But this piece really came to me as I worked on this material, saying, you know what? Isn't it the thing for humanity right now that's knocking on the door? Where is their compassion? Thank God people are responding with compassion, helping each other. There's beautiful images of beginning in Italy where people singing and singing to each other, playing the piano and the accordion and, singing local songs. It's compassion. It's eros. In governments, in political systems, in families, you know, at some point you say, like, say, I've been doing this work for 40 years. You say, enough with the madness, enough with the violence, enough with the terror, enough with the locking away this stuff. Open the door. And how do we create conditions to make it safe enough to open the doors? And sometimes, you know what? This is what chaos is about. Sometimes chaos will break down the prior structures we had to let in the new. Maybe that's why the people are singing on the little terraces in Italy, and people come to each other's aids in all the cities around the world right now, helping out. Now, look, those that know me, and many of you know me for many years, I'm not a Pollyanna. I grew up in Brooklyn. You know, I saw a lot. We're from Sicilian and Neapolitan heritage. It's not a, you know, apple pie kind of culture. And I could tell you, as I look at the next part of my life, I'll be 70 in 3 years. And many of us, you know, people, those that we're really close to here, we're all pretty much around the same age. And you say, you know what? This is the next step for a lot of us. And on one hand, it may be in the outer world, the fear of love and tenderness of another person. In the inner world, it may be the fear to live the most authentic life we're meant to have. And I don't like that language because it sounds trite. It sounds like a Hallmark greeting card. But the point is, there is a life we're meant. I mean, those of you that, you know, I'm sure you know, Fleming, you're a wonderful musician. You know, Butch, you have this love of the outdoors is unparalleled. You know, me with writing, I mean, I when I open the door, my things to start writing, it's peace. My office is a disaster. I got many books on the floor. But you know what? It's what I'm meant to do. It's a part of what I'm meant to do. And somewhere, and this is the love part of the story here, if we're ever fortunate enough to know what it is that we love, we need the courage. And I know, Dara, you had one quote where Cyrano de Bergerac, I think it was Cyrano de Bergerac, said, could I have the courage of Prometheus to do what he did? I forget the exact line, but something like that. Can I have the courage? This takes a lot of courage. Because, as I said in my opening comments today, that we know on some level that whatever's outside that door, as terrifying as it looks like, we know it's going to upset our psychic equilibrium. For many, retirement is going to upset the psychic equilibrium because you don't know what the next stage is going to be. We have no idea what it's going to be. Oh, I'm going to do this. And we don't know what's going to come to it. If you allow yourself to be open to psyche, the beautiful image that Tom Lane gave us. Oh my God, you know, to open the door to see what sense of the spirituality is going to come into our life. So with that, I want to thank all my friends and colleagues that helped so much to put this together, and with the technology, with the images, and Sylvia's just, you know, such a graceful introduction and moderating this whole presentation. I want to thank you so much, and all of you that have taken time from your busy lives, you know, from wherever you are, from many, I know we have probably another 15, 20 different countries represented here. From the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the Institute, I really want to thank you for taking the time. And I hope in some way, in some small ways, while this is not putting another mask on and washing your hands, and thank God we have people that can help you with that, I hope in some way this offers another perspective of, we don't want to extend the washing of the hands to being in our psyche. We want to find a way to be strong enough to open the door to do it. So with that, Sylvia, we can open up to a couple of questions. And then again, I want to thank everybody.
Yes. Well, before we open it up to questions or comments, I just want to let everyone know that what we saw, what we were privileged to participate in, is in English, the grammatical structures: subject, verb, object, place, time. This is how you know to create a sentence. This is what comes, this is what happens, this is where it happens, and this is the time in which it happens. And I think this is what we have been regaled with today: psyche, subject, verb, object, place, time. How do we let those contents in that need to be revealed to us so that we can express? So Michael, thank you so much. And for those of you who need to go and are not able to participate, what I'm going to encourage you to do, if you're interested in any more exploration, I know that you can join us on the CC Web Facebook page, and perhaps Butch, if you could put it up on the chat bar, because we have a lot of new programs coming up, a 5-week fairy tale exploration that is not only going to be by Michael, but by other colleagues who have done the work. We will have a new 5-week summer dream. We already have one in Latin America. Hope to see. Nos vemos muy pronto con eso. We have a program in Russia. Thank you, Anastasia, for being such a wonderful part of that. So there is the language being spoken, not only today, but in programming. So any questions, anything that you need to know, please
So
do.
this also will all be translated into at least 3 languages. We're going to have the transcript out probably within a couple of weeks.
Yes, so, and also bear with us, I didn't want to mention too much, is that we are learning the technological curve of allowing these programs to be translated and made possible and made available to all of you who speak other languages. And so to that, please feel free if you have questions and or comments. Michael, how much time would you like to dedicate to this?
About 10 minutes, maybe?
Okay, about 10 minutes. If you can put it on the chat bar, or you can raise your hand, and then I can unmute you. And thank you all for participating, those of you who've been able to get on.